Welcome to the NanoCap podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernlin, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of NanoCap companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of NanoCap publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. This week I have Ed Gillespie, the founder and CEO of Abundia Global Impact Group, stock ticker AGIG. Abundia Global Impact Group focuses on converting waste into renewable fuels and chemicals in the United States. Ed, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Will. It's nice to meet you.
So we talked a little bit before we started recording, but you grew up in what was voted the 2015 tidiest town in Ireland. Tell me a little bit more about life growing up, where I just assume a smaller town, 20-ish thousand people in Northern Ireland. Not everyone was an entrepreneur growing up. So Tell me a little bit where kind of your business sense came from, how you fit in as a kid, where you had these big ideas and maybe people didn't understand it. And tell me a little bit about kind of just your upbringing and how you kind of got attracted to business over time.
Yeah, so growing up in Donegal, as you pointed out, is not full of entrepreneurs, but it is full of hardworking people, right? So I was the youngest of 10. I was brought up with a very strong work ethic. And I suppose the one thing that I've always had is an ability to find a way around problems or to bring in the right people to help me solve the problems. And from a very young age, I became an entrepreneur when I was 22, built my first business here in Ireland, and then obviously expanded globally. It's always been about surrounding myself with the right people and bringing a common sense approach and the solutions approach to any of the opportunities that came in front of us.
So we're going to kind of jump from you going to college there to you somehow ending up doing business in New Jersey with SafeBus. I don't think of big yellow school buses when I think of Ireland. And so I'm kind of curious how you just got into not growing up in it, got into the busing industry. And it's a very cool idea. So tell me a little bit about SafeBus.
Yeah, so SafeBus came through, we were looking for opportunities to expand our portfolio, and we were introduced to the Child Safety Network, which is a child safety organization in the US. And the founder there, a guy called Ward Lieber, had an idea about how he could make the school bus industry in the US safer. Essentially, we started with a small investment. The investment grew, and then so did the involvement in the company as such. So yeah, it was a cool project, certainly a worthwhile one as well.
Yeah, so tell me about kind of the pivot where you are investing, working in startups and such, and then you decide, okay, green tech is where I actually want to spend my time moving forward. So yeah, tell me about kind of with that realization. How did you first come up with the idea / hear about the idea of Abundia, and kind of what got you excited about that?
Yeah, so I was working with a family office based out of Charlotte, and we had identified a recycling technology that could take polyester waste plastic right the way back to feedstock. We were working with a CTO based out of the UK at the time, and he came to me with a vision of the other type of plastic, the polyolefin plastic, and the waste biomass, and how we could transform that into something more valuable, essentially. So we've added the technologies. I went to the family office and said, listen, I think this is worth a go. I think we can set stage gates on the way through validation. And then Abundia Global Impact Group was born. So Abundia Global Impact Group was set up to take advantages of both these technology pathways that our ex-CTO had put in front of us. And that is effectively it. The rest's kind of history as such. We did all the validation work. We spent a lot of the risk money, all the risk money essentially before we went public, to make sure that everything stood up, not just technology-wise, but commercially, so that the plant could actually pay for itself.
And for going public for you all, was it mostly to raise capital for the next step? Was it a way for the kind of investment group to say, hey, we put so much money up front, let us de-risk a little bit, take a little bit off the table, so at least we don't have nothing at the end of this if something doesn't work out? Or kind of what was the thought behind just not raising, say, like a Series C or something?
Yeah, so we were very lucky with the family office we had. They basically provided 100% of all the capital that was invested in the projects to take them through all the development stages, to validate the technologies, to pivot whenever we realized the technology was wrong or there was a better technology out there. And at a point, we got to a stage where, you know, we had all the ducks in a row essentially, and we felt that the next step would be to enter the public markets, certainly to create some value for the largest shareholders who had invested a lot of money, but to broaden our access to capital rather than the over-dependency on one funding source as such. So that's how it all came about. We worked with an investment banker in New York. We identified Houston American Energy Corp, who, of course, the vehicle that we reversed into as a clean and tidy vehicle that would be suitable. And here we are today, a public company.
So we've danced around it a bit. In your own words, Ed, what is Abundia Global Impact Group? What do you all do? What's your special sauce?
So our secret sauce is we're a waste to value company, right? We take waste plastics or waste biomass, and through a thermal process called pyrolysis, and it's two separate pyrolysis pathways, we create a pyrolysis oil. And at that stage, most of all of the industry sell that pyrolysis oil to the large oil and gas companies to blend into their refineries. We don't do that. We take it another step, and that step is the upgrading process to take it to a drop-in scalable fuel. And at that stage, the company can make more profit and therefore pay for these plants and more rapid deployment of the technologies. So I know it's not a short sentence, but realistically, we're a waste of value company, but we create a sellable drop-in product.
And how much of your sales pitch, kind of percentage-wise, is we are saving the world by recycling waste compared to this is just a great way to get biofuels in an economic way? Kind of like, how do you weight that as you pitch it out to people that, hey, not only this is going to make you money, but it's going to save the world and vice versa?
Well, I think that anything that we can do to supplement the fossil fuel industry and divert a little bit of that away is a good news story, and we should do it anyway. But not 100%, a majority of my sales pitch is that we won't do the project unless it stacks up commercially regardless, because at the end of the day, this plant has to pay for itself, and we have to convince large investors to put down a lot of money to make sure that we can develop these projects. So my pitch is more about, certainly it's a good idea, it's a fantastic thing to do, we're excited about the impact we can make, but commercially, the plant's going to stack up.
And you mentioned it earlier, kind of the byproduct you make. So it's not something just to help refine fuels. It's actually the fuel itself, since you take it to the next level.
Yeah, so we make the full suite, right? Everything from chemical feedstocks that can be used to make more plastics, so circularity in that portion of it, then renewable fuels in the form of transportation grade fuel or marine fuel, and then of course the holy grail, which is sustainable aviation fuel for the aviation industry. So we make refined products that can be blended into existing distribution networks.
And I think you refer to it a few different places as your feedstock, as the kind of like first material going in. How do you acquire that? Do you buy from recycling centers? Do people just donate it to you because they don't want it in their landfill? Do you have to go out and buy spot recycled plastic by the pound? How do you get your stock?
Yeah, so I would really like them to donate it, but unfortunately, that's not how the industry works, right? So we end up working with waste companies or recycling companies that have mechanical recycling facilities already developed. We purchase the waste plastic from them. Then we have a polishing step that we do at our own site, which will obviously, this is waste and it's going to come in varied forms, right? So if we're taking it from your bin, it's going to be contaminated. There's going to be silts, even though it's been separated, there will be some contaminants there. So it'll need a final polish, as we say. Or if it's post-industrial or post-manufacturing waste, it may need size to the proper size before it can go into the extruder to feed to the kiln. So we like to have a wide net as such. We'll take from post-industrial, post-manufacturing, and post-consumer waste on the plastic side of things, so that we can ensure feedstock stability, first of all, to make sure we're going to get what we need. But also, as we expand those markets, it allows us to expand the plant capacity, because we've proven to the marketplace that it's worthwhile separating these wastes out, because the technology actually works and they get paid what they're supposed to be paid for the waste.
So yeah, you hear these stories of that, like, your plastic doesn't really get recycled a lot of times and it ends up in some landfill. Is that because someone like you hasn't gone in there and bought it, sorted it, cleaned it, and then had the proprietary process to actually turn it into something? And so that's why it's gone to waste in the past?
So the truth is that the waste management industry are a little jaded with technology solutions for waste plastic, right? So they have a pathway now, and they collect the waste, they separate it only if there's a market for it, but ultimately the rest does land in landfill or incineration. What the industry needs is success, right? It needs us to prove that the technology pathway that we've put together will actually work, and that will consistently buy the waste plastic from them. So as the recycling industry, and especially the chemical recycling industry, grows, more and more plastic will be diverted from landfill. It's just really and truly the industry's still in its infancy, and it's going to take a few more years and a lot more success to get people to separate their waste from where it's destined.
So before we get into your Baytown facility, in a perfect world, say 5-10 years from now, would you just have the waste management companies already pre-separate things and have a little bit of the processes done for you, so it'd be that much more efficient, now that you guys have proven that, hey, this plastic into fuel thing isn't some pie in the sky thing. It's actually something we're doing on a daily basis, and it's profitable. Can you guys help us out a little bit more? We'd buy that much more feedstock then.
Yeah, that is exactly how we see this playing out. As we are successful, and as it's proven that this is not a waste, it's actually a commodity, right? Then the waste industries will spend more money on separation facilities to expand their profitability, because we're paying more than what they're getting for it, or what they're paying to put it in a landfill. And therefore, as we're successful, they'll expand as well.
Sorry, one more question before we get into the facility. Where does the government come into this? Is there anything where they're saying, hey, Ed, we'll give you grants to go find more places with feedstock? Are the waste management companies getting grants saying, hey, companies are going to need more feedstock in the future? Is there any sort of that, or is it kind of at this early point still kind of the free market trying to figure out where there would even be the most successful use of government money?
Yeah, so I think the governments vary from not just state to state, but country to country, and indeed continent to continent, on their willingness to support that type of strategy. I think what is very apparent, though, is that the large chemical, oil and gas, and end users, the brands as such, have set their own mandates that have provided strong pull-through for the separation of the waste and the process of turning that into a feedstock for them to reuse as well. So I think, the big shift probably 10 or 12 years ago, where government legislation and consumer demand and consumer outrage set the industry in motion, the industry has caught up. And I think that those large industrial companies and end users that I spoke of have set their own mandates, and they're targeting them and sticking to them. As long as we perform, there'll be a market for it as such.
So I interview a lot of biotech companies on this podcast, and it's always kind of hard to know what step they're at and what's going to be the next thing that's going to push them over the next hurdle that allows them to raise the next amount of funding. For yours, it's very straightforward. You're building this mega facility in Baytown, Texas, hopefully to be done by 2028-ish. Tell me about that. Tell me, what about Bayport? Was it just that it was close to Houston and close to the other waterways, rail, train? Was it because that's just where the energy industry lives in the world? Or kind of tell me a little bit more about the facility, the thought behind it.
Yeah, so we had intended to build our first facility in the UK. And it became apparent that, the regulatory industry in the UK is a slow process, and that the UK is an island with limited feedstock. So we decided we would broaden the search to the US, and we narrowed it down to 2 sites. And of course, the Baytown one was one of the final sites. The criteria for the search was, first of all, was there enough waste? We carried out a study. There's ample waste for this phase and for multiple phases thereafter. And what else did we need? So we needed infrastructure. We needed access to a distribution network. We needed technology support, which Baytown is the oil and, well, Texas is the oil and gas hub for the US, so therefore the expertise we needed is there. And then we needed land that is industrial sourced land that has, a pathway to planning and permitting inside a realistic time frame. And as we narrowed down the search to the last 2, Baytown just became the most logical. And that's where we landed.
I gotta hear about you talking to like the city council in the UK versus Houston. And someone in Houston who is just so used to working with the oil and gas companies, have worked with 1,000 of them, love it. It's the lifeblood of the economy, opposed to somewhere where UK where they go, okay, you have this brand new technology doing what? I have some questions. So tell me a little bit more about that and just the culture shock between the 2 meetings.
The culture shock between the 2 meetings was quite something. And it's not that the UK don't want to do this. They do want to do this. It's just, as I said, they're an island. They're a much smaller parcel of land, and they have a lot of criteria around getting there, right? So we will get there with the UK site, I have no doubt. We have the site identified, and we're starting to move through the process there. But the openness for business in Texas was something to behold. We went to the first Chambers County meeting, and every single person that we needed to take this project from an idea to actually breaking ground and getting permits and planning and everything we needed were at the meeting and at the table. And they all went through in detail the steps we had to go through to get to a successful outcome. And by the time we left, we were like, this is definitely the right place for us to do this business. It was something to see everybody around the same table at the same time. And that was really the first meeting.
So the next 2 years or so, the plan is to launch the big facility in Baytown. How much of your time is taken up just trying to get that planned and getting that launched? How much of it is you looking for your second and third location as this one kind of gets going? And then what other initiatives do you have going on at Abundia Global where you, besides these facilities?
Yeah, so obviously we are strongly focused on getting the first plant under construction and getting to revenue from that plant as soon as possible. But our ambitions are way past that, Will, right? We're looking to build at least 7 to 10 of these globally. We are, we look at it as we're developing this one. By the time we get to the turning on this plant on, we'll have site 2 lined up and site 3 lined up with regards to planning, permit, and feedstock offtake and the site identified. That's a smaller part of what we're doing right now, just because the next 6 months are going to be so busy making sure that all the boxes are ticked to break ground. But the vision is, so when we start construction on this one, we'll be moving forward with plants 2 and 3 or sites 2 and 3 to make sure they're ready to go. And then alongside that, the biomass to liquid fuels technology completion, or the technology stack or pathway, as you might call it, we'll complete that during the summer as well. And that allows us, when this plant's ready to go into construction and the development team can take over as such, we can turn our focus on making sure that we get the other technology pathway up and running as well.
So just hypothetically, I'm just curious, if, say, 15, 20 years from now, every piece of plastic that's ever produced is eventually turned into biofuel, like what percentage of like jet fuel industry would they be able to supply? Would it be 10%? Would it be 75%? Has anybody ever done this math?
No, but I can tell you, it's a funny thing, right? Because even if we disrupt 5% of the jet fuel industry and 2% of the transportation grade industry, they're growing so fast that we may not even keep up, right? The truth is that the move, the transition into alternative fuels is important, because our dependency on fossil fuel derived products, everything that's in your room, everything that you can touch has some type of chemical in it, right? So it's supplementing all that and making sure that we do what we can understanding that there's more to do, and it's going to take a lot of solutions to make a big impact, but we have to keep going.
And then it makes me wonder, you mentioned UK as a possible like second location, or down the road you'd like to have something in the UK. How much have you also just thought about, just from the like feedstock point of view, of like opening a place in like Indonesia or in like Lagos, Nigeria, where they're like potentially, with the population growth and such, infinite amount of feed supply, and you could make a manufacturing plant of the biofuels or the plastic-based fuels 100 times the size of the one you're building outside of Houston?
Yeah, those markets are obviously exciting because there's such growth potential in them, Will. But, you know, the markets we have identified, we're focusing on deployment. We will expand if the opportunity arises, but for right now, it's laser focused. Get the first one going. We know where the waste is in these markets. We know where the offtake partners are, and we know where the skill sets is. We would see a fair amount of risk diversifying into new regions right now.
Well, as we wrap up here, what gets you excited? What gets you excited about Abundia Global Impact Group? What does the next 5 years look like if everything goes perfect? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, well, the excitement comes from the stage we're at, right? There's been, as I say, millions of dollars and, you know, almost 4 years spent putting this project to where it is today, and we're at the point where we're executing. The excitement of knowing that if we execute on this plan and that we can roll out in multiple locations, that we can drive some significant value for the company. And that's it. I'm good to go. I'm happy to get up every day and keep pushing this over the line. And the good news is, after, you know, years of, you know, moving around and de-risking the process, the line's moving closer and closer every day we get up. So we see this as 5 years' time. Both technology pathways fully commercial and operational under Abundia, both technology pathways profitable, and a pipeline of projects lined up for the next 10 years thereafter.
Oh, exciting stuff. Ed, if my audience is curious about what you're working on, want to learn more about it, where should I send them?
Send them to the website, AbundiaGlobalImpactGroup.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending your time with me. And
this podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement therefor by NanoCap Podcast or its affiliates. The NanoCap Podcast Express disclaims all liability for any individual's use of the information presented in this podcast.